If Steam had a Japanese little brother, it would be called DLsite. This is a online store where people can buy various things such as mangas and video games. And of course, it's got its safe for work and non-safe for work part of the website, just like Steam. And for years, it has operated with absolutely no problems. I mean, it had payment processors, it had credit cards, and hundreds of thousands of people made purchases there every single year. But something is happening recently, and as I discussed it in previous videos, ever since Vice magazine released the Pulitzer Award-winning article where they have decided to go after the anime industry, we have seen a lot of pressure towards Japan in order to censor. And most Japanese AAA companies did, in fact, decide to go with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the companies who decided not to bend the knee are noticing increasing pressure from the West. And one of these pressures seems to be coming from the payment processors and the credit card companies. Now we can assume what those pressures are by looking at what Patreon is doing. So for those of you who are unaware, if you draw any lewd stuff, if you're a not safe for work artist and you plan on having a Patreon, all of your work needs to have affirmative consent. So even if you're drawing adult female characters, the consent needs to be affirmative. So you cannot have like Lady Dimitrescu in a Resident Evil setting going after the protagonist, because that does not imply affirmative consent. You cannot have like a Sakubasu that uses hypnosis in order to influence the main character. Like, none of that is allowed, right? The payment processors do not allow that. In fact, I would go even further and I would say that Game of Thrones, if it was made an anime, it would go in violation with Patreon's terms of service. Because not only do you have like Daenerys getting raped by Khal Drogo, but there are like in the books certain scenes that most people don't know about. Like, for instance, after the Mountain loses the tourney, which happens in the first season, him and his men go to a tavern and they each take turn raping the innkeeper's daughter, and she's 13. So this is like Western stuff, right? Like, because this is done in America, in the holy soil, in the holy land of the United States, not only is it permitted, but like no payment processor would prevent you from buying Game of Thrones, the book. But when it's anime and it's made in Japan, all of a sudden there is increasing amounts of pressure on it. And you'll notice like the pressure is only towards anime. It's not towards actual pornography, to the industry that involves real people. No, it's just towards drawings. Because the main purpose of this is to destroy the industry that's competing with the West right now. It's to protect Warner Brothers, it's to protect Disney. And all of this is seeming that it's coming from the credit cards. It's as if one day PayPal looked at it and said, well, I'm making too much money with this, but I am really a moral company here. Like, I genuinely care about what people purchase, so I just cannot support the anime industry. I just cannot support the DLsite anymore. If you actually look behind the scenes, you will notice that there's many groups that have aligning interests. Like you even have right-wing groups that just want digital ID for the internet. So they basically want to get people used to the idea that when you visit certain sites, you need to have like a digital ID or a facial scan in order to do this. There are Christian groups who are being taken for useful idiots because they genuinely believe that they can eradicate porn from the internet. And as I mentioned before, there's Disney and Warner Brothers that do not like the fact that there is competition. And all of these groups are pressuring the payment processors. Like, all of these groups are trying to give negative publicity to Mastercard, to PayPal. And they also have, like, sympathetic people that work within these industries. And this is why you have the payment processors, like, constantly deciding, okay, we're not going to support this website anymore, or if you don't get rid of this artist that draws this problematic content, we're not going to support your business. And the problem with this is that most people genuinely don't care, right? Because it's anime, it's, who cares, it's porn or whatever. But if you're looking at the trend, they're not going to be satisfied with just censoring Japanese animation. Like, there are now NGOs that are pressuring credit card companies to stop allowing people from buying guns. And there are payment processors that actually did pull out from this, right? Because it's like every single time there's a tragedy, it's like, well, this payment processor has blood on its hand. Look, if you weren't allowing this person to buy the guns, none of it would happen. And you know, like, once you go into this mindset that it's okay to allow payment processors to deplatform things that wouldn't have been considered to be up for deplatforming in 2016, then you get the Chinese system. Like, why do you even need to pass legislation when you can just get the payment processors to get people to be unable to buy meat because you're saving the planet, or to be unable to do whatever purchase they want because they consume too much carbon, or whatever the fuck. You know, like, we are moving towards cashless societies. Like people are moving more towards using credit cards and using payment processors. And if the payment processor says, well, even though this is legal, we do not allow you to buy it, what can you do? You know, you're disincentivizing those industries pretty much. And the message is like, well, if you want to make anime, it's safer to make sure that you hire some American consultants that will teach you how to do diversity, inclusivity, and equity, so that you don't risk that your anime isn't supported by Crunchyroll because Crunchyroll doesn't want to be deplatformed from the payment processors. It's pretty much how it works now. And the boiling of this frog is being done slowly with things that no one can disagree with. Like, if you're thinking about how the Californian manja body type B started appearing into video games, notice that it wasn't overnight. You know, like, first the female characters in video games, they started getting more and more covered up, and then their jaw started becoming more manly, their shoulders more broad. It took 4 years to get to that point. And we are noticing that the pressure done on Japanese productions are also very slow and gradual. Now, when the payment processors do not fund DLsite, take into account that there's a lot of safe for work on DLsite as well. There's a lot of mangas and things that don't have any lewdness, and now they cannot be purchased by the West. So DLsite was now placed in the position of bending the knee to Western censorship or trying to fight against it. They are obviously trying to fight against it, but it's going to be a very difficult process. Take into account that they say that this is a temporary block. I remember that when PayPal pulled out last year, it was also supposed to be temporary. And many accounts on Twitter that get suspended is also temporary. But the reality is that they're using the word temporary to actually mean permanent. I personally do not expect that Mastercard and Visa are going to return to DLsite. Probably DLsite is going to use a way to launder the anime money, where you're going to buy like some form of currency, maybe points or gems or something, and you can then use those points and gems to purchase the actual products on the website. But again, like, this shouldn't be necessary. This is absolutely ridiculous, and I do think that this level of censorship is going to increase because some radical fringe extremists in society have realized that you don't have to actually convince the majority of people in order to pass a legislation to get what you want. You can just pressure the payment processors, and if they do what you want, then it's almost as if it's legislation. And I know that there are a lot of individuals out there who are saying, well, you know, don't like it, make your own. Like, make your own banks, make your own processors. The reality is that, financially speaking, it would be possible. Like, if all the anime coomers would put their resources together, they could make a processor or even a small bank that would be able to facilitate these transactions. The problem is, if you look at the level of regulations required to create something like this, it is almost impossible to do so, and it is done so on purpose. Like, the legislation is done so that the tallest person in the swimming pool keeps asking for the water to rise, so that only the tallest people get to stay in the swimming pool. So it's almost impossible from a regulation perspective. Like, the government doesn't allow you to create one of these things. I would like all the anarcho-capitalists to just shut the fuck up. You know, like if you want your private bank, your private payment processor, that pressure your legislative in order to remove the regulations required for people to be able to create one, and then we can have a conversation. But until then, let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.